be presenting this evening. This evening's agenda, we will start with the 2016-17 preliminary budget and budget to the 17-18 preliminary budget. I'm going to talk about changes in estimated revenues and appropriations. We're going to talk about the taxes, implications, the Homestead Farmstead rebate, and then we're going to go into a historic perspective on where we've been in our budgets and where the district's been with their finances. I'm going to look into the forecast going forward, and this is all going to be used to demonstrate where our budget is today and the tax increase that is needed. Also, anytime during this presentation, if you would like to text to budget@crsd.org, you can ask any question at the end of the evening. I will get any questions that we have, and I will try to answer them. Okay. First of all, we're going to start with just a summary of the preliminary budget update. First column is 2016-17 actual budget. As you will see, $222 million of revenues, $226 million of expenditures. 2017-18 preliminary budget, which was adopted in April, $229 million in revenues is projected. $7.1 million difference between the 2016-2017 budget. Expenditures, $226 million to $233 million, or a change of $7.2 million. You take your revenues minus your expenditures, and you will get what fund balance we are projecting to use based on the budget. Last year, our projected use of fund balance, or the year that we're in currently, is $4.3 million. In the preliminary budget, it is at $4.4 million, and we'll talk much more about that. It was an increase of $99,000 in the net change in fund balance, and we'll talk about that some more as we move forward. In fact, it's the next slide. As you will remember, in the slide before, we have $4.4 million use of fund balance. I have used a target use of fund balance of $4 million plus future educational initiatives, which is about a $2.6 million committed fund balance that we're projecting to use this year. So I've been saying our target is $4.2 million. We should not have a budget that exceeds the use of fund balance by more than $4.2 million. So right now, if you looked at it, I believe that we need to have additional $228 million of reductions in expenditures or increase in revenues. Please understand that this number is something that I use because when we look at variances, since revenues are $229 million and expenditures are $233 million, I'm historically, I've been off by 1% or so. And if you look at those numbers, they would generally equate to, if I'm off by 1% in the revenues and expenditures, it's about $4 million that we would break even. And I believe that we're in okay financial shape on a long-term basis if we could stay close to that number. Not to say I wouldn't also enjoy to be lower than that number, because that would help our long-term financial position. Okay, as you looked at the revenues, and I reference the page F3 in our budget book, and our budget book has a lot more detail in it, and it can be found on our website, and I suggest anyone that's interested should get a copy of the budget book and actually review it. Because it'll give you all the information, much more information than I'll be going on over tonight. Current real estate taxes is increasing by $4.7 million. That is because we're raising mills by 2.5%, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail about that. Earned income taxes is going up by $200,000. That's about $16.3 million this year to $16.5 million. That has begun to increase again. It went down last year, but it's back up. The real good news story is real estate transfer is going up significantly. We have been depressed since 2017 with real estate transfer taxes, but it looks like the real estate market is starting to heat up again. And again, everyone knows interest rates are going up. We also changed and went into a investment consultant is now helping us invest our money, and we believe we're going to achieve some greater earnings with that also. Okay. State revenues, basic instructional subsidy is going up $269,000. That is a very slight increase. And there's a lot of discussion that we've had in regard to that. There is a new funding formula. That is, we're going to probably have us at a depressed amount of increases in our basic ed subsidy because of the results of the formula and how it affects us. Transportation subsidy, we decreased that by $200,000. If you've been watching what the state has done, they have reduced their line item by $50 million, and we believe that's a portion of what our line item will be decreased by. They haven't come out with a lot of detail on that, but this is just an estimate that I've used. It's about a 10% reduction in our transportation subsidy. And of course, our big increase is the employer retirement contribution. It increased by $1.5 million, and that's really just half of what our expenditure line item increased, because the state contributes or pays us, reimburses us back half of what we have to pay in. So you'll see a very high line item number on the expenditure side. Federal revenues, I've adjusted the total federal revenues to $1.4 million. We're not having any good news out of Washington, and I don't believe we are going to see any increases in that. In fact, I believe we're going to have some slight reductions in that. Access funds is reimbursement for medically necessity services for special needs children, and we get that out of medical assistance, and that funding is also going down. So that is, we are reducing that considerably because we're getting less revenue year after year. Okay, this is the calculation of the real estate taxes. This is really what funds the district's budget. As you will see, budget page F4 talks about it also there, but the assessed value of our properties, that's the assessed value of our taxable properties in the district. Start with that number, and then we decrease that number by Act 153 properties. Those are properties where their tax level has been set because they're open space properties and items like that. So you will see where we will get revenue from those properties, but that revenue will not increase as we increase taxes as other properties would increase. So our net taxable assessed value is $1,277,000. The collection rate is 97.2%, a very high collection rate. If you think about it, most people pay their real estate taxes with the 2% discount. So therefore, if everyone paid their taxes at discount, the most we could receive is 98%. So we get a large amount of our taxes paid the first year. So therefore, you do the calculation, and the value of $1 million is $1.2 million. We're proposing, with the 2.5% tax increase, of a tax rate, millage rate of 120.71 mils. There you'll see the amount. The calculation is $149 million plus the $246,000 minus a rounding that I need to do for state reporting. So the total number that we would receive is $150 million from taxes. If you remember, our revenue budget is $222 million, and when you think about it, $150 million comes from real estate taxes. That's quite a bit, and we do not get a lot of state support to support us. The homestead rebate is where we get it taken off, and you'll understand that. I'll go into that a little more. That is the gaming revenue the district gets from the state solely to reduce the taxes to our taxpayers. That has nothing to do with our operations. I want to point out to you that our assessed values went up about almost $9 million this year, or an increase of 0.71%. That is a fairly large increase as years by years go by. I generally expect it to be more like 0.44% is something that I've looked at in the past. So that is almost double what we usually get, not quite, but that is important. That means even if we didn't raise taxes, our tax revenue would have risen by just over $1 million. So if we kept our tax rate at 117.77, our revenue would still increase by $1 million. Therefore, if you remember this slide, that number, about 3.6 million of that number, is from the increased millage rate. Okay? Okay. I am now going to get into what the tax rate does for actual residents of our community. There's the 2.5% tax millage rate. It's the Act 1 index. We cannot exceed 2.5% unless we went out for budget exceptions approved by the state of Pennsylvania, or we went for a referendum for something above that. Last year's, the current millage rate is 117.77. We will go up to 121.71, or an increase of 2.94 mils. Remember, it's a 2.5% tax increase. The millage rate actually equates to 2.94. The median household assessed value for this year is $38,520. That is the county does that calculation. I like to use that calculation rather than doing another type of calculation, just because it's a very defined calculation rather than something that people may not agree with or agree with. So if your house is valued at $38,570, your tax increase would be $113.25 for this year. Below, I've just scheduled out other assessed values so you can see the magnitude of how the taxes would change based on the size of your home or the value of your home. We're going to talk about the Homestead and Farmstead rebate now in a little more detail. The state allocation, as I said before, is $5.5 million. There are funds remaining from last year that were not distributed. Actually, what happened is we get numbers from the county and we develop our budget on that. So there were several properties less than what the county originally gave us. So $54,000 was not distributed in the current year, so it'll get distributed this year. So this year we have $5.6 million available for distributing. Homesteads, we have 20,000 homesteads, 47 farmsteads, for a total of 20,063 eligible properties. You do the calculation of distributing that money between all those properties, so you get a level amount of $281.10. I will tell you this is somewhat of an estimate still, but it'll be within dollars of that amount because there could be some reasons why they would change. It's a little more complex calculation. We have to take this into the millage rate and determine what the assessed value will be reduced by, the assessed value exclusion, so there could be off by a little bit. But what I've done since the inception of the Farmstead Homestead rebate, I am showing you the increases and decrease throughout the years of the value to a homeowner. So in this year, although your taxes will go up by, on average, $113, your homestead rebate will go up by $7.28. So your taxes will really only go up by the net of that. So it would be reduced by a little more than the amount that I've shown here. The $113.25 minus the $7.28 is really what the net number would be. Okay, changes in appropriations. last year's numbers and this year's numbers. As you will see, and I want to really pull this out, we spend most of our money on salaries and benefits. So last year, our salaries were $108,746,000. This year, they went up to $109,665,000, and we've increased our staffing 12.33 employees at this point, and we can talk about that a little later, and we'll go over our historic numbers in handling that. So the variance is $919,000, and that may sound like a lot to you, but when you look at our total salaries, that is only an increase of 0.85%, and you will see that we are hiring additional employees there. So that just shows that we are not increasing wages a lot, and it is not a reason for our taxes to be going up right now. The reasons that for our taxes to go up is really twofold. Healthcare has increased by $1.8 million. It's gone from $21.5 to $23.4, and it's gone up about $1.9 million. We are still working on that, and I will tell you there'll be an update. I think that number is going to come down somewhat in the final budget, which I will be showing the board next week. The other area, there's the $3 million. If you remember, the state contributed an additional 1.5 to us. Our expenditures are going up by $3 million for the retirement. The contribution rate is going from 3.03% to 32.57%. So that means for every dollar an employee is paid, we are contributing 32 cents to the retirement system. So all in all, out of our increase, almost $9 million of that is from salaries and benefits, and the two biggest, again, is the retirement and the health care. The 300 objects is going up 3.6 million. 300,000 of that is the last of three increases in our debt service that actually will help fund the financing of our capital projects. In addition, let me see if I have that here. Yes. In addition to that, technology is going up significantly. Last year we cut that quite a bit, but that is going up $576,000. If you listen to the board meetings, you will hear many people talk about our need for additional technology, and I think we're trying to address that. Why do we need a mill increase of the full 2.5%? Over the past 6 years, we have reduced staffing and have reduced some educational programs for the district. We think it is very important to maintain our education at 2016-17 levels. It would be very difficult to make changes to the educational program with not really affecting our programs. Our fund balance for the first year, I think last year went down, or maybe it's the second year, went down by $4.5 million. It is starting to go down, and we need to make sure that it doesn't go down too quickly. I've shown in the past where a fund balance dropping quickly, trying to stop that from dropping with the Act 1 index is very difficult. So we have to really watch how quickly our fund balance goes down. Additionally, outside of our operating budget, we make an annual contribution for capital expenditures of $3 million. So when you look at the numbers, our operating budget may not cause the fund balance to go down, but once we move the money, it looks to me like that will cause our fund balance to go down and cause us problems. One of the biggest things this year is the financial uncertainty at the state level. If I could say one thing, the elimination of property tax concerns me very, very much. And it concerns me even more because the state is dealing with a budget deficit and they have no long-term solutions. And so far, they have been making 1-year revenue increases or decreases to fund their budget each year. And I am concerned that at some point, it's going to be very difficult to fund anything. The elimination of property taxes would mean they'd collect more state revenue and distribute it to the districts. And I am just uncertain of when and how much we would receive, especially with their current fiscal situation. So that can't be understated today. I think people need to understand that we all have to be very concerned with that. Financial history. What I want to do is just show you where we've been and where we are going. This is actually my first year. Our fund balance actually increased by $1.6 million, as you can see. And we had a $27.9 million fund balance. 2011-12, it went up at the high point. It was $29,429,000. 2013-14, it actually decreased, but at that time we made some distributions to fund capital projects, and we did fund some bond refinancings and reduced our long-term debt by using some of our fund balance. So they were for long-term issues, and it was a good use of fund balance. It went down to $28 million. 13-14, you'll see what we did, and that went up $944,000. So it went up again. 2014-15, it went up one more time. 2014-15, I do believe that is the year that we had a one-time payment from Lockheed Martin for a assessment appeal, and that caused that, and that's why we were able to move money. And again, we moved money for long-term reasons, and it was a good reason to move the funds. 15-16, we went down $4.5 million, and we did move money for capital projects. And I think it was a bond refinancing also we moved there. So we're reducing our long-term debt by contributing to refinancing bonds. So we're not refinancing as much as we would have. We're using current assets. So our fund balance is currently down to $25 million. I also just wanted to show you the historic increases in taxes over that same time period. Okay. Where have we been? We have faced two very difficult budgets, 2011-12 and 2016-17. 2011-12, we had a $14.2 million deficit and a $14 million deficit in 2016-17. Over those two time periods, we reduced staffing in 11-12 by 65 people, and last year we reduced it by 40.15 people, or a total of 105.14. This year you will see that there is staffing being increased, but I think we have realized that there are programs that are in need, and we're trying to address them this year. Also, we should point out that in a way to relieve additional cuts last year, we actually negotiated with Aramark for our custodial services, and they reduced staff during the day, so that actually put more emphasis on our internal staff during the day for custodial needs. District budget, a lot of people will say from 10-11, if you look back, you'll say your budget increased by from $199.3 million to $226.5 in 2016-17, an increase of $27.2 million, or almost 14% over the 7 years. There's an explanation for that, and I'm not sure it's the best explanation, but it's really to fund retirement. If you look at the $27.2 million, of that, $23.8 million was an increase in our retirement contribution. Our retirement contribution went from 8.65%, which is almost 9 cents for a dollar, all the way up to 30.03. The year that we're talking about, next year, it's going up to 32.57. So if you look at that, much more was increased just because of retirement. I believe the other costs have been managed very, very well. The other costs only went up $3.4 million, and that includes all cost centers, including salaries, health care, other employee benefits, operations of our facility, student transportation, and instructional materials, and debt service. And if you remember, debt service has increased by just over 600,000 of that. So taking that out, and that was for our new capital projects of $110 million. As I have put this together, I also have shown financial forecasts moving forward. If you look at the 2016-17 budget, if we would lose, or if our revenues and expenditures came in as the budget did, and we put $3 million into capital projects or capital reserve, our fund balance would go down $7.3 million. So it would move from the $25 million to the $17.7 million. That is very concerning to me. Although the history has been that generally our actual revenues are about 1% higher, and I hope it continues, than the revenue, projected revenues or the estimated revenues, and our expenditures are generally 1% or so below that. If that should happen, I just projected it out showing those two scenarios. If we move to $3 million, our fund balance would only go down by $2.9 million, but it would still have our fund balance going down to $22 million. I've done the same thing for 17-18, and there's a wrong number there, but it would go down to $2.9 million, and our fund balance would go down $19.2 million. 18-19, this is a big year for us because there's a lot of capital expenditure decisions being made, and this is actually going to be updated in the next couple of weeks with some more knowledge of what we know today. But as you will see, depending on what we close, if we close a middle school, you'll see what our fund balance does. If we close an elementary school, you'll see what our fund balance does. If we close nothing, you'll see the fund balance. Now that is to say that we will be taking all the savings and helping our long-term financial impact become better. That is not saying that we're going to use it to fund other programs. It's not saying that we're going to use that to reduce our tax call. As you can see that I have 2.4% there. I'm still saying that we're going to need a percentage that high. So a lot of different things can happen depending on what we decide to do. But that is just an illustration of where I believe we may be by the end of 2018-19. I'm hoping that that information shows that we really do need the 2.5% tax increase for the long-term health of our district and to continue to keep our programs in place. What is going to happen next is June 1st, there's a finance committee meeting, and I will be discussing changes from the information I showed you today to the final budget. And I do believe there's some good news there. And I'm going to get feedback from our board members to develop the final budget that I hope to be adopted on June 15th board meeting. So that is where our steps are moving forward. June 1st, I welcome anyone to come to the meeting and hear what we have to talk about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and see if there's any questions from the people that are in attendance today or anything on email, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes to answer your questions. Thank you. No questions. Just been informed that there are no questions, so I'm not sure there's going to be a need for any recess. Thank you for listening or watching, and hope to see you on June 1st. Thank you. Okay. The real